Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello and welcome to this video. First of all, I'd like to start off with thanking everybody who has subscribed, everyone who watches the videos, everyone who makes comments. I should say people that make appropriate comments, people that make intelligent comments. I've had some comments, I just leave them there. I ignore them by people that, for whatever reason, felt it necessary to make a mean comment. But for those people that go through an intelligent way of leaving comments and addressing things, thank you. I appreciate the time you take out of your life to make a comment or watch the video. It doesn't matter if you watch 3 seconds of the video or the whole video. It's the fact that you took the time and watched the video that I appreciate. I also like to give thanks to the other people out in the world that do Gen X videos, your Gen X tubers, because a lot of them are doing really good jobs, doing really intelligent, very thought-provoking and humorous videos. And I support the ones that do it as an income source. Anyone that creates content for income, even if I don't care for or it's not my thing, I give them thumbs up because you're doing your thing your way and making money off it, and that's cool with me. And you're basically giving it to the man, and I just like that. So with that being said, what we're going to do today is I want to talk about a book. A very thick book. Stephen King's It. I read this book fairly soon after it came out. My brain is telling me 16 or 17, but I more than likely picked it up because at the time I worked at a used bookstore. I probably picked it up used, so it was probably more 17, 18. It just, my brain has misfiled that date for whatever reason. I'm not going to break this video down, or not going to break this story down in the traditional sense where people look at plot, this, protagonist, antagonist, all that literary stuff. I'm not going to break it down that way. What I'm going to do is break it down relatable experiences in the symbolism that Pennywise and other elements within the story symbolize, and how it all is a very good, just wonderful, basically it's a very symbolic, very in your face story that how Gen X grew up, but it's not set, the actual novel itself is not set in the Gen X time period, what is accepted for Gen X. However, the book came out in 1986. Stephen King children, are all Gen X kids. And I have a feeling that watching his kids grow and their toils and tribulations work themselves into the book. I don't know for sure. I could be totally wrong. That's just my opinion. I've never had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Mr. King. Not that I could probably mentally handle it. I think if I were to meet Stephen King, first thing I would do is probably shit myself, piss myself, make a couple of very loud, unintelligible noises and pass out, to be honest with you. Because this man's mind is so wonderful. I mean, America should feel blessed that Stephen King was born in America. I mean, it's just if literature holds or regains some of its popularity and its significance in the American consciousness, I think there will be a time when Stephen King is listed up there with Steinbeck and Thompson and all those great authors. F. Scott Fitzgerald. I mean, he is that class of writer in his own genre of writing. So let's actually get into the story. In the story, it takes place in the late 50s. It starts with the kids in the late 50s. In the novel version and in the 1990 TV miniseries, it starts out in the late 50s. And the kids or adults in the mid 80s when the book came out. And the experiences and the traumas the kids went through parallel a lot of how we as Gen Xers grew up. Your kids, the self-named, self-deprivating group of kids called themselves the Losers Club. And they were fine with it. It was a case of they knew what they were and they wore it like armor to protect themselves. And by wearing it as by never forgetting who and what they are, no one could hurt them with it. For those of you seen Game of Thrones or read the books, you know that Tyrion Lannister makes a comment to Jon Snow along those lines. I can't think of the exact quote right now, but that's basically what our heroes do, our protagonists, Losers Club. For whatever reason, their parents weren't active in their growing up. They weren't there. They provided the necessary things: food, bed, a little bit of instruction, a little bit of guidance, and a roof over their head. But for the most part, they had to figure this stuff out themselves, which we as Gen Xers had to do. We figured things out, we did things, we went about our life doing it. And in the grown-ups have to come back together, and they have to basically face the trauma from their childhood. They have to face, admit to, and embrace the things that shaped them as kids. And Pennywise the clown, and all his various forms and guises, are a manifestation of those traumas. These kids, they build their own clubhouse. Me and a friend of mine did that growing up. We didn't really build a clubhouse, but we had a group of trees that we could get into and basically be hidden from the world. And that's kind of what we did. We had to deal with bullies. We had to deal with all kinds of stuff. The kids in the novel and the miniseries, and even actually, I'll wait till later in the video and we'll discuss the two movies, the 2017 and the 2019 movies that came out. Why I think those are such wonderful movies. Even though they deviate, there's a lot of deviation from the main story, but we'll get to that. The kids, like I said, it's the whole Pennywise thing is a manifestation. It's so you, the reader, have something to go, okay, this is this is it. But when you look past the surface, you get this beautiful story of kids dealing with trauma, dealing with growing up, dealing with the transition from being kids to young adults, puberty, sexual awakening, all of that. And there's a part in the book that is, which I hope never makes it to a film or TV version of the story, because if you look at it for what it is and not the symbolic nature of what it is rather gross. You have basically, there's a scene when they're kids. They have just defeated Pennywise, and they're in the sewers under Derry, and they basically run a train on the female member of the group, which symbolically is the transformation of losing your innocence as a child, the loss of virginity. Like I said, if you just look at it in the context of the story, the words, it is gross, but the symbolism is there. It's that loss. And trust me, I was somebody that never grasped that concept until I was older. When I read it, even as a teenager, I was kind of grossed out by it. There's a few other things I was grossed out. But as I got older and started to see the world, understand the world around me, the symbolism became apparent. The bathroom scene with Beverly is one of those scenes that she's in the bathroom washing up and basically hears voices in the sink. It goes through the whole thing of her dealing with voices, then blood shoots up all through the sink and covers the bathroom. And her parents come into the bathroom and can't see the blood, which you talk to any woman, her feelings about when she started menstruation, that is very apropos. It's very symbolic of that transition from childhood to womanhood. And it's really, me being male, never had that transition. The transition I had was basically wet dreams. And realizing women, that the cooties that girls had were good cooties. However, that is kind of touched on in the book with the boys when they're at the quarry, at the swimming hole, them kind of being shy and kind of sneaking peeks at Beverly. The setup between Stuttering Bill or Bill Devereaux is great because it has the twist in it as they're adults is fantastic. Kick the tripod. The fact, these are all things, and they're done in this very things that, well, every generation has to deal with it. But growing up, Gen X, growing up with my parents, their obligations to their jobs, to what they had to do, to put food on the table, So growing up that way, growing up with this feralness, this make it or break it type culture. And that's basically what the kids, Bill Dembrow, Ben Haskin, Mike Hamlin, Eddie, can't remember Eddie's last name, which is kind of apropos if you've read the book, and I can't think of the last one's name at all. Brain's gone mushy again. I got the book here, I could probably look it up, but I'm not. It'll come to me at some point, probably about 2 minutes after I stop recording. However, our band of kids, they go through this traumatic thing, this traumatic change of life, which after I retired from corrections, I spent a couple years as a monitor on school bus and got to see it firsthand, got to see all these kids at different ages and stuff dealing with these changes, these physical, biological changes, and coping with it the best they can, which really as an adult, and if you, I mean, your own kids are one thing, but if you ever have the opportunity to see kids that aren't your own, aren't your kids' friends, watch them and see how they deal with it, and you'll find that this trauma, and that's what it is, trauma if you think about it, because America as a society does not deal with sex real well. It just, our Puritan forefathers kind of screwed that shit up for us at the beginning. So generally speaking, Americans, especially in the South, I can't speak for the people in the North, especially the Northeast, but I imagine they have their own variant of this. But in the South, fathers are real bad about not letting go of their daughters. They're real bad at admitting that their daughters are going to have sex. They're going to have babies. Or they're going to have sex with someone of the same gender. It's not necessarily their sexuality that bothers them. And in a lot of cases, the sexuality does bother people in the South real bad. However, the idea of their little darling, their little baby having sex, and in our generation, it was real bad. I had went out several times, even before I got married to my first wife, with people with very strong fathers who couldn't accept, had trouble accepting that their daughter is now a woman. Whether it be a young woman, teenage woman, or whatever, that she's a woman. And Beverly's father in the novel is creepy as fuck. He's an exaggeration of that father type, that I will have sex with my wife, but my daughter will never have sex except with me. Yes, and in the book, you get this very strong feeling, and in the movies that came out, that Beverly's father is sexually, physically, and mentally abusing her. Like I said, Beverly's father is this over-exaggerated embodiment of that father not wanting to let go of his daughter. Ben Hamskin, probably my favorite character from the word go in the book, is overweight, intelligent, has the knowledge to go out, find things, learn things that he doesn't know, learns the things that are crucial for him to know to overcome things, which is things we had to do. Manners. I mean, anybody in Texas or the southern part of the United States, I imagine in other places too, that manners are more valuable than money, especially like in the part of Texas I live. A thank you or good day or hello ma'am, sir, holds more currency than $100 or $1,000. And we had to learn our manners. We had to learn things. We had to learn all of this stuff on our own because our parents, in order to survive and keep a house, weren't there to teach them to us. They weren't around. And that made for really interesting dynamics. I grew up right next to a military base, so you also had to learn things about other cultures. You had to overcome those obstacles. You had to overcome the kids whose parents were in the Israeli army that came to Fort Hood to train or cross-train or whatever. Those kids, you had to learn that things like dietary restrictions and stuff, and what to say and what not to say. We had to learn that on our own. And Ben in the story is that embodiment of the, I need to learn this in order to be better at, you know, what we need to do to survive. And that is part of what, you know, we dealt with, how we dealt with it, why we dealt with it. So yeah, it's just kind of there. Then as adults, when we started having kids, we started getting married. I don't have any kids, have had never a desire to have kids, but my friends that did have kids, some of them did real good as parents, some of them were helicopter parents, and some of them raised the kids the way they were raised. So they had these little pockets of feral millennials. In fact, my wife is an example of that. Her parents were late boomers. They raised her basically the same way I was raised, even though she's technically a millennial. She's as feral as I was at any given point in her life, any given thing. And I think that's one of the things that attracted me to her. And this is what these kids do. Stuttering Bill had a stuttering issue. I have a stuttering issue. That's one of the reasons why I have these exaggerated pauses, or I'll stop mid-sentence, because I have to slow everything down in order to speak intelligibly. So yeah, I understand the Bill. I understand Mike. Mike is probably my second favorite character, because Mike, we're talking in the book, Mike grew up late 50s in black. And there's a whole thing just beautifully written about when Mike's father is dying of cancer, and he's talking to him. His father is on painkillers, and his father is just freely telling him about his time in the military and segregation in the military and all this stuff. And for me, that's probably one of the most beautiful written parts of the book, because you get a feel for what he had to deal with. Now you fast forward to the 80s. You didn't have as much open racism as you do now, but you had it. It was there. There are certain words, certain phrases that were completely acceptable to say in public that aren't now, because we have evolved beyond that. Stanley Uris, that was the one I couldn't remember. Stanley Uris. I knew it would come back to me. I didn't think it would come back this soon, but it did. However, it's just wonderful. Yeah, this video is running long, so I will probably do my next video on the parallels between Growing Up Gen X and Stephen King's It, because those two movies, the way they're set, the way they modernize them, is perfect Gen X food. It's perfect Gen X relatability. So with all that being said, until next time, peace.